Welcome to my show. Welcome to Resiliency Within. This is Elaine Miller-Karas, and I am so excited to tell you about our guest today. And
Recording in progress.
you're going to hear a little noise there. But today, my guest is Bev Weise. She's an MBA, ACC. She'll explain what that stands for. But I want to say a little bit about what the show is going to be about and a little bit about her. But before I do that, I also want to thank the Trauma Resource Institute, who sponsors the show. And many of you know that is the nonprofit that I co-founded, I can't believe, 20 years ago. And I'm also really happy to say that today, 20, really, almost 20 years 21 years ago, I was in Thailand after the terrible Asian tsunami. And today we have two of our staff members that are in Thailand doing a training for people from Myanmar, formerly Burma, and teaching them community resiliency model skills to become teachers. I'm so proud of that circle that to me has been completed because I really think that part of the formation of TRI came from that very heart-wrenching trip of going to Thailand and to the little city of Khao Lak over 20 years ago. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as we're starting today. But I want to say a little bit now. I'm going to move over to Bev Weise. And so she's a leadership coach, social entrepreneur, and co-founder of Refugee Jumpstart Coaching. Bev will share the inspiring story behind the organization she co-founded in 2021 with Syrian refugee Hussein Alzribi. Am I saying that right?
Alzribi.
Alzribi. I need to add that
It took me
acronym.
a while to get it.
Yes, to help educated and highly skilled refugees rebuild their professional lives. Now, let me say a little bit about, and she's going to tell us more about Refugee Jumpstart Coaching, but it connects refugees around the world with a global network of pro bono leadership, wellness, and career coaches, as well as job search, entrepreneurship, and industry mentors. Their organization also, they let me just say this. Their innovative work empowered displaced professionals earned the organization the International Coaching Federation's Global Social Impact Award in 2024. Congratulations,
Thank
Bev.
you. Thank you.
That's really quite
We were honored.
sensational. So the same year, Refugee Jumpstart Coaching became a recognized 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization in California, expanding its ability to support refugees seeking opportunity, dignity, and meaningful work. So let me just say a little bit about Bev. She has quite an illustrious career. She brings more than 35 years of experience in corporate and nonprofit leadership development. She is an ICF certified leadership coach and the founder of Leadership Talent Solutions, a consulting firm dedicated to helping organizations identify, develop, and retain leadership talent. Her career has included roles such as executive director of Interlaw Ltd, an international association of law firms, and corporate director of executive planning and development at Northrop Grumman Corporation. But honestly, and I think this is a wonderful place to start, a turning point happened to you when you went to Greece and you encountered refugees from Syria. So I want to turn it over to you now and say, we're starting, if you would tell us a little bit about that, but if there's anything else on your mind to start with, Bev, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Yeah, kind of on a fluke in 2016, I heard about this whole Syrian thing happening. I did not even realize there were refugees from other parts of the world because that was the focus. And I have to say, I think it was my Jewish values that kind of propelled me to want to do some volunteer work internationally. Besides, I like working internationally. And because helping the stranger is written more times than any other thing, I think in the five books of Moses. But I went on a fluke. I went to Chios, Greece. I met somebody who did some volunteer work. He goes, "Oh, I'll set you up. You can meet my friend Wasim, and I'll introduce you to my Afghan friend, and whatever." So I went. When I said I guess I should volunteer with some organization, he goes, "No, you're too old." This was like a long time ago, 10 years ago. He said, "No, you're too old. Just do it on your own. Go get a blanket, put it down, teach them English." So I went and I did some of that, but also I just sat and had coffee with outside of their in the refugee camp. I just walked in at the time. You can have free access into there. And I met these most remarkable people who were English teachers, who were professors, who were engineers, who were, all these pharmacists. And they're lying on these mats, these thin straw mats. And it was horrible conditions. And I'm coming from the talent management world for, 30, 40 years. And I'm thinking, there's such wasted potential here. This is wrong. This is just wrong. And it really motivated me to want to do something. I wasn't sure what I could do. I would work with lawyers, but I'm not a lawyer. Um, and I'm not a psychologist, but I am a coach. So they say, do what you know. And through a series of introductions, I met Hussein, who was in the Netherlands at the time, where he fled in 2015. And he used to be a lawyer. So what propelled him to do this is lived experience as a refugee. And sometimes refugees like to stay within their own communities. Like, if I'm Syrian, I stick around with the Syrians. And he was very culturally aware and very open to other cultures. So he had a really good sense about what's going on. He was a leader in Athens earlier on in building these refugee communities, kind of self-sustaining communities. And when he heard what coaching was, he goes, that's it. That's what we refugees need. He said, I was a lawyer. He was, had finished law school a couple years earlier, just start practicing, and then he had to flee. Well, he didn't know how to translate that experience, not to mention he was in prison and, all the trauma related to what he went through. Anyway, we hit it off and started this organization 5 years ago. And it's been an amazing experience, an amazing ride. And I think the combination of the lived experience and the coaching. And I have to say, one of the wonderful things about this space is it attracts people who are competent and knowledgeable and passionate about wanting to help others. And for them, it's an experience. It's all virtual. But to get into somebody's head and to understand what they've gone through and be able to have an impact, I think has impacted our coaches as much, sometimes more than the refugees in terms of a greater appreciation and understanding about resilience and overcoming trauma and that sort of
Well,
thing.
I kind of want to just, say a couple things. I think it's really important that as we are speaking today, and this we're broadcast today on the 5th of March, 2026. We are experiencing war in our world right now, and we know that wars create refugees.
Yes.
And I want to say that if there is really a time to really uplift your work and the organization, it is now. Because as you and I both know, there will be more refugees that will be in many parts of the world because of what's happening right now. We don't know how long this is going to last. And even if it lasts a short period of time,
Yes.
does not mean that it would not, people will not get displaced, because when your homeland is being bombed, you're losing your home, your housing, your markets. And where do you go? And some people will leave their homeland and go to other countries and become refugees and become displaced. So I just want to say that in this moment in time, because when I first spoke to you and you shared with me your mission and vision of the organization, I was greatly moved, being a person that works internationally. So could you maybe tell us right now, what is the mission and vision of the nonprofit?
Yeah. So our mission statement is really to empower refugees to achieve economic and social integration by enhancing their ability to secure or establish careers in which they realize their full potential. I've had a career of helping people realize their potential and really need that. So how do we do that? Our mission is coaching, training, and mentoring to help them get jobs that are, or start their own businesses where they could utilize their full power of their experience, their education, all that brought them to that point to be able to utilize them. There's nothing that made me sadder than when I was in Athens. I met a guy from the Congo who had a master's degree who was washing dishes. It's like, no, no.
How can we help him use his talents to improve the world in his own life, right?
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. There is just so much potential there, and he was so smart and so educated. And so, yeah, so that kind of reinforced the need for this kind of work. And yeah, I think this work, I think you're right. And with the environmental stuff going on, there'll be a lot of environmental refugees. It's only increasing at a time where the world is kind of shutting it down.
Well,
Uh,
so let's
yeah,
talk a little bit about that because I think it's really important. Because I founded a nonprofit, so have you. There is a condition in the world right now where there is funding that's being pulled that used to be there to help our world community, including within the United States. And so that's even, I think, an emphasis added that we need to really come together as we can to
right.
continue funding so that we can help refugees start new lives. So maybe say a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Well, about the funding thing, yeah, we like so many other large organizations and smaller organizations who have gone under, we're under tremendous pressure right now because our funding is coming to a close soon. And so we're looking for mergers or acquisitions or something of an organization that makes strategic sense for them, that they're either in the coaching space, the resiliency space, the refugee space, where this kind of organization can really enhance the kind of work that they're doing. But nobody can do it without more funding, you know?
Right. Well, and that really brings me, maybe we can come back to the funding issue.
Yeah,
But, when before I talked to you, I wasn't thinking about coaching. I know a lot of coaches, but they tend to be in the corporate world,
right.
working for different companies, et cetera. And then I go, oh, coaching and humanitarian response. And, you shared with me that you have scores of people who volunteer their time to be coaches to these amazing refugees. So how does coaching fit in? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's there's such I feel well for sure refugees don't know when they sign up. They have no idea what coaching is. They don't do coaching in the Congo. They don't do coaching in Syria or Afghanistan or maybe Ukraine. No, not really. So there's not an understanding. So we have to explain several times. But I think the humanitarian field generally up until now, I think, has been focused on basic needs. It's like funding, which are critical, right? Food, housing, diapers, all the basic kinds of things. And what our organization does is saying, okay, how do you translate that once you're stable enough to then empower people to become part of the economic machine of in their countries of resettlement? And we do that in a few ways. And I think there is a difference between coaching and mentoring, I might spend a moment about.
Yeah, please let us know. Yes.
Yeah, we do have a methodology that says we kind of combine coaching and mentoring, but we also now have more mentors. So I'm trying to separate that out. So mentors provide information. They will help you with your CVs and with your interviewing techniques, and they have information. Industry mentors will say, you're in IT, here are the kind of possibilities you can have in terms of the kind of work that you're looking for. Um, and so we have that kind of imparting information based on their own experience and their own knowledge. Coaching is very, very different, actually, when you're in the coaching mode. It's all about being very, very present for the person, being curious. And I think most people who are engaged with us, we've got about 70 coaches worldwide, certified coaches, that they come with some curiosity about what is the life like of a refugee. And once you build that trust, you really get inside their heads about the kind of struggles. I cannot tell you how many times coaches have written me and said, I am so impressed with the resiliency of these people. I don't think I could do it. What they've gone through, I couldn't do it. So they're learning from them. So I think presence, just being there and listening to them and asking, and these are all kind of coaching skills, asking deep questions like, what are your biggest challenges right now? And or when they feel really kind of down and out and they've got a particular challenge. When have you had a similar challenge in the past where you were successful? What kind of skills did you have? What did you do? Well, so I think helping with that. I think a key thing that we get feedback on all the time is heightening up their knowledge about their own strengths. We'll use Strengths Finder sometimes, or sometimes we don't. And the coaches, we've got a lot of coaches who are trained in strengths. Um, I've done a lot of work with strengths myself. And to be able to have nomenclature, to have a name for your top 5 strengths out of 34 that Gallup developed 40 years ago, helps people, I think, identify, yeah, I do have that. And how do I leverage that? So for an example, there's a client that we have who works at the Four Seasons Hotel in Greece. And he took this assessment and he discovered this, I forgot the specific name of it. It's relational, the one-on-one. He goes, oh, I don't know if I have that. That's kind of interesting. And then he started thinking about it and he worked with a coach and he realized I've been like that since I was a little boy. And he had the coach worked with him on pulling that out. And now he is a supervisor and won the supervisor. He won the Employee of the Month award, which was a huge deal for him at a 4-star hotel, 5-star hotel, and just having more confidence. So I think identifying the strengths, and also somebody recently who is an assistant professor in the UK who is a refugee thought at the beginning, I'm starting from scratch. My whole career, I'm starting from scratch. And a coach helped her realize, no, you're not starting from scratch. Look, really highlighting her background and her experience and her education and all that, and gave her confidence of, phew, it's like I don't have to start from zero. I'm starting from a higher plane.
Well, and Bev, your words are music to my ears, and you know that in the Trauma Resource Institute, we're a strength-based approach to
Yeah.
trauma and stress. And so when we go in, we've always stressed, there's 3 questions when we start a training. What or who uplifts you?
Mm,
Who gives you strength? If you're going through a challenging time, what or who has helped you in the past? One of my favorite ones is, have with all the challenges that you have there been moments of generosity that
mm,
come to you? And so when we start that way, just like what you're saying, it changes the way someone looks at themselves. But I also want to add, we know that there's resiliency circuits in our brain. Dr. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin, right, identified these resiliency circuits. So what you're doing, I don't know if you did it with that intention of the
no.
neuroscience, is that you are actually strengthening their well-being by asking those questions. Because when we have trauma, we can get like it's like we have blinders on. We just see, oh, but I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't
Right.
have this. So what I'm hearing you say with coaching, you expand the lens. And when you expand the lens, the world is never the same again. I was reading something by Desmond Tutu. I was such a fan of him during his life. And he wrote about the overview effect. And the overview effect is when astronauts go to space and they see the planet Earth, they come back and they're never the same again because they don't see us as separate countries, but as a common humanity. And oftentimes the astronauts will start nonprofits, will start doing humanitarian work for the first time. And I'm thinking about you going into Greece. In that sense, you had the overview effect by being in the tents, right? And talking to the people.
Yeah.
In some ways, if you would have been an organization with a planned agenda, you may not have had the same, who knows what would have happened. But
Right.
there was something about the conversations, about the common humanity that you
It's a
shared.
common humanity. I remember taking out pictures of my grandkids, my little
And
grandkids,
showing,
and
yes,
talking about it, and it's like person to person. And
yes.
honestly, they don't get a lot of that. Let me just add, our strengths kind of focus on their own personal strengths. But what I love about TRI, the Trauma Resource Institute, is you bring it the lens of a community, and the strength that you get from the community, which also is key. And the training that your organization did for us, for our coaches and for our clients, was so instrumental in a lot of our clients who are in, some of them are in refugee camps in Uganda. and in Rwanda. And they work as leaders in those camps. And they were so focused on this is so helpful. We've got kids that I want to train people on this. So we need to talk with you more about how we can do that. Yeah, I think the
We're
strength.
actually going to Uganda in July, so who knows? Maybe we
Oh,
can connect up with them. We've got a project.
oh, that would be great. We'll talk. Yeah,
We'll
that
talk.
sounds
We'll
great.
talk more. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
And the other thing I think coaches do is just this deep listening and and the non-judgmental space. I remember one woman said, when I said what my dreams were, all my friends like laughed at me. They said, "No way, that's not going to happen, whatever." But my coach, she said, took me seriously, and I was able to explore that more where I couldn't with my friends. And so just having somebody help you think through your key values, what's really important for you. Our focus is on the career, but to get to the career, you have to build the resiliency. And let me just mention something about our research project. A couple of years ago, we had some funding when it was nice to have funding um, to engage in a research project. And this is also in Athens, which was kind of our home base a bit, because a lot of refugees come from all over and they go across the Aegean and they end up in Greece. Um, and we gave them housing, 42 refugees. We gave them housing for a year, which was great. And then half was an experimental group where we gave coaching and half we did not. Later on, we gave them coaching just because ethically we wanted to do that. And it was on the efficacy of coaching refugees on their well-being and employability. And I was asking the researchers, why are we doing it on well-being? I was new to the well-being world.
Yeah.
I go, they got housing for a year. My well-being would improve too. I mean, it's like, why are we even going there? And it turns out those who are coached significantly improve their well-being, significantly compared to the control group, who also got the free housing. So there was something to that. And the employability is, we feel the resiliency is foundational to having the self-confidence to go out and empower yourself to go, because we don't find them jobs, they find it on their own. And we empower them to say, you can do this. And we will give them some skills with our mentors, but it's really the confidence that they have that they could apply for a job that they can do well on an interview and really put themselves out there, talking about their strengths, talking about using the refugee. And let me just also say, the refugees, it gets a bad rap, right? They're a little bit sometimes embarrassed to say I'm a refugee because I think there's a lot of bias against that, and they have a lot of hurdles to overcome, systemic hurdles. Um, and I think that um, the strength of being able to say, how do you turn that? How do you change the context to say, I came to this country, I didn't know the language, I had no place to live, and now I'm whatever, I'm working or whatever.
Well, I
So,
think
yeah,
helping them have that paradigm shift about their
yeah,
self-evaluation, right?
yes,
Because how they think about themselves is going to influence even the jobs that they look for. Like when you were talking about the young man from the Four Seasons, he didn't
yeah,
know he had that skill.
yes,
But when the light was when really the coach helped him see that part of him, he
yes,
was able to see that in himself. And
exactly.
also thinking with coaching, being a person who's been so involved with well-being and mental health, I think that coaching also provides something that I believe is important because many people who are, like you say, in quote unquote refugees, they don't want to say necessarily, some of them, that I'm struggling, that I'm suffering, that there's something wrong with me. And so with a coach who's going, oh, there's something right with you,
Right.
and let's talk about your strengths, it is also a portal for them to enter that actually what you're saying is improving their mental health because it's improving their well-being.
Yes.
I think there's many, as an old trauma therapist, yes, individual therapy can be really helpful for people, but when it's not available and there's other avenues, we need to open up and scale all the possibilities of what help people when they've had to face the challenges of being a displaced person because of whatever the condition may be. And I'm
Right.
also thinking like of my own family. And my mom came to this country from El Salvador. She had a passion, to do things here because of where she left. So she actually was very creative and industrious, right? But it almost was amplified because of coming from another country, which I think I see that with the people I know who, for whatever reason, have been displaced for many reasons that have come to America. So I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
comment.
no, I totally agree with you. I mean, and people who kind of, you know, poo-poo refugees, I go, meet my refugees. And I think the solution to a lot of this is having people having access to people and having conversation. You realize the motivation, the hard work, the determination, and the overcoming of the odds of what they're
What
doing,
they've been through. Oh
what
my
they've been through, what they've been through. I was talking with one refugee who has worked with us and for a couple of years, and I just now heard his journey. It's like, oh my God, from the Congo to Rwanda and then Uganda, it's like what a journey, and come out of it, and it didn't even come up in conversations before. And of course, I don't push that. When they're ready, people will share that. But I think what you were saying, I think it's changing the mindset.
God.
And Hussein and I developed this like five mindsets of a refugee.
Oh, I want to talk more about that. I see that we have been having such a good time where it's,
I know.
it's time for our break. So let's
Okay,
talk about the five mindsets after the break. So we're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Trauma Resource Institute. And as you can see, Bev Weiss and I have a lot to talk about. We're just getting started. So we'll be back in just a few moments and we will continue this conversation.
great.
Welcome back. This is Elaine Miller-Karas, the host of Resiliency Within, and I'm so blessed to have Bev Weiss with me today. And we're talking about the Refugee Jumpstart Coaching organization that she co-founded. And we are going to continue the lively conversation we had before the break. And we're going to talk about the five mindsets. So if you can tell us about this concept and what you bring to the refugees in terms of these ideas.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for that. Based on a lot of Hussein's experience, lived experience, and also talking to a lot of refugees from different backgrounds, we kind of identified these five. a victim mindset. They feel like a victim, and they're a survival mode mentality, even though they're not, maybe they're surviving fine, but the mentality still says, you know, can I continue living? There's a survival thing when they left their countries. And so that's
Kind of
with
like
them.
an idea, even though they may not be living in scarcity, that scarcity still exists within them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Well put. And unempowered. Like I can't make a difference. I can't get into this country that I want to get into. I can't find a job because there's too much bias against me, and from where I come from. There's identity conflict. You know, if you wear a hijab and you come back, and I know somebody who a woman who's wears a hijab and she's in graduate school and people look at her a little bit differently. And it's like, do I want to get more accepted into this and take off my hijab, or do I want to wear it? But it's who I am. And this kind of conflict about how much do I assimilate and how much do I hold on to my values. So there's that internal thing. And then there's a distrust of systems, and authority. You know, you could understand they're, you know, the countries where they came from, horrible leaders, autocratic, um, um, you know, either prejudice or war. And so they don't so they distrust systems. So even, you know, sometimes we would have refugees join our organizations like, what's in it for that? What do you mean they volunteer their time? What we our coaches? It's
What's in
like,
it for them, right? What's in
what's
it?
in it
Yeah.
for them? There's something going on here, and they don't quite understand it, but they don't trust it until they meet with them a couple times. They go, wow, they really are interested. I can't believe people are volunteering to do this and help me. So, so they have these mindsets, and we did some training on this with our coaches, and we also presented at a conference in London and got feedback from coaches. Is like, how do you change this? How do you make all these more empowering? How do you help somebody deal with an identity conflict? How do you you know, have them look at the fact of the survival thing, you know? So all these things and different methodologies and coaching and techniques that could help you, or questions to ask or to raise with them to help them change their mindset. Because if they keep having these kind of these mindsets that are unempowering, it's difficult to move on and to be resilient. So that's another thing that we work on with our clients.
Well, and I think that's important because as you were talking earlier about the strength-based, I mean, you could almost, my brain always thinks about these things. You could also say, well, what would be the mindsets that you want to have? So are there five mindsets that would be counter to each of the
Oh,
ones that you said, right? How would that
I
look?
love that.
My strength-based perspective. So if it was one that I'm disempowered, well, how have you been empowered?
Yeah,
It's like, oh, well, to me, washing dishes, getting a job may have been a huge act of empowerment to even get a
yeah,
job.
yeah,
Because all of a sudden now his family has food, his family has a place to live. It
right.
may not be the job that, he was trained to do with his master's degree, but it doesn't mean that he can't go there, right?
Exactly. As long as he's
Yeah,
doesn't feel stuck in that job, but
right.
that planning, because yeah, you need money to live, no question about it. But also not to give up on your dream of where you wanted to go before you were displaced.
One of the mottos of the Trauma Resource Institute is what else is true?
Yeah,
And it sounds like that's embedded in your organization
yeah,
too. Yes, that might be true. But
right, exactly.
it's so interesting, I had a experience during my life where I was struggling financially, and I remember then I wasn't. But I remember I still felt that scarcity. And I had a dream. And it was my dad had passed by this time. And my dad came and he said, I just wanted to tell you, Elaine, as long as you live that way, then that's the way that you still are, even though things have changed. But I think that what I'm sharing that with you because I think that's an important shift that I think many of us get stuck,
Yeah,
whether we're refugees or not, in
right.
the mindset that this is what just is. And, I think I saw that growing up with uh, grandparents from who grew up during the Depression. And so they were always, kind of hoarding food, like, oh, we have the stockpile that's in the basement, or
Right,
we've
right.
got this because they knew when they didn't have it. So
Yeah.
I'm saying that because, I mean, there is something about the knowledge of that having happened that
Yes.
also is not bad to be mindful of what you need to do to protect yourself and your family.
Right. And we have you have that motto, which I love, and we have in the coaching world questioning assumptions. So, it's like, yeah, that might be true. And what else could be true? There's like this
Yeah.
assumption ladder that we study in coaching school. And so have them expand their thinking around, yeah, you didn't get that job. And the immediate thing is because I'm a refugee. Yeah, that could be. It could be. What else could it be? Well, maybe somebody else was more qualified. Maybe I didn't, whatever. Maybe they already had somebody that they wanted to hire. So they expanding their thinking about their assumption that they lock into because based on their own head or based on past experience, just to open up their thinking around it.
Well, and also, it was also interesting that just came to me as you were saying that. Sometimes when we've had that, maybe there was, they said, oh, well, that organization was racist, for example, and maybe they really are.
Yeah.
So I've also spoken to people who said, I knew that was true. So I decided then that I was going to do something else, that actually the racist thinking actually empowered them to do something differently.
Hmm.
And so sometimes the very thing that is a really negative thing that happens to us also is kind of almost the
Okay.
fuel that helps us see things in a different way
Hmm.
and start nonprofits. Or, I know someone whose child, sadly was murdered, and she started a nonprofit for, you know, she actually she builds play yards. Her daughter loved, playgrounds. And so
Oh my
she
God.
builds playgrounds through her nonprofit. But you know what I'm saying? That kind of concept
Right.
that you
Well,
see people doing things that they would never have done because
right.
of the challenges that they face.
Yeah. And I think that's true. I think a lot of refugees, and we don't focus that much. We did have an entrepreneurship program, but we have some coaches who are trained in entrepreneurship. But I think that a lot of refugees want to become entrepreneurs because they don't want to fight that world of trying to work for a company and or when the economy is difficult and you're not in a field that you're competing with local people who sometimes economically it's a problem, in their own countries. What's crazy to me is that there are countries in the US and in Canada and other in Germany where they need specific skills and why they don't. And there are some organizations that help identify people in those areas and then help them transition. But even then, I think coaching would be so helpful. The onboard coaching of even, and I would love to get to that point, of working with refugees beforehand, before they get the job, and then transitioning them to the job. Because I did a training program, a live one in Greece a couple of years ago, and I remember somebody saying, "I'm on this team, and I disagree with what they're saying." They asked for our opinion, and I kept quiet because I'm not sure I knew the right answer, and everybody else seemed to be going that direction. It turned out he was right, but he didn't want to speak up. And how do you do that? And how do you talk with a supervisor, and how do you give feedback? How to give performance feedback or receive feedback? Um, which I have to, can I just say as an
Yeah.
aside, we have a lot of African clients now.
Uh-huh.
And I am so impressed. I go, anybody here in the US would want to hire these people. They are so open to feedback and asking for it and appreciative and thank you and the gratitude. And, now I understand how to do that. Thank you so much. They're like so eager to get the feedback. Not everybody's like that. It's like, yeah, tell me, with their ears closed. It's like, give me feedback. I don't
Well,
really think.
we were talking actually yesterday before doing the show, and we were talking about Chobani yogurt. And it was started by a gentleman, and I hope I can pronounce his last name. I think is Yula Kaya.
Yeah.
But he was a sheep herder and goat herder um, in his country of origin. And here he comes to the United States and goes to upstate New York and doesn't is not impressed by the yogurt in the US. I mean, this is what I'm thinking about, the challenges.
Yeah.
Then buys an old factory that has, kind of almost gone into disrepair. And I think the last I read about him that he has like $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
But I mean, those kinds of things happen. They're not
A lot.
necessarily flukes. I actually saw him speak one time in England, and he was so empowered about really coming from such a humble beginning and coming to a new country and starting something with an idea. Because talk about a paradigm shift.
Right. From a sheep herder
A sheep herder
to a billionaire.
to
Yeah.
a billion,
Who started this organization that helps refugees and has about 500 companies worldwide that have committed to helping refugees, either giving them jobs or software or something to help them, mentoring, having.
I just want to say if anybody is works for Chobani and or knows him, we would love for him to find out about your organization. Maybe he's one of the people that
Well,
can.
I just connected with the CEO, so we'll see what happens.
Right. Well, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed
Thank
because
you.
I think it's a great fit. Of course, from my perspective,
Yeah.
it's a great fit. Yes. So, do you want to say anything more about mentors? Because you've talked about the coaches.
Yeah.
The mentors do something a bit different than and
Right.
who can become a mentor within your organization? Do you have to be a certified coach to be a mentor or not?
Yeah, no, no. Mentoring is something completely different, and a lot of companies in corporate social responsibility and in other organizations, LinkedIn has a whole thing. They say we do coaching. I'm sorry, we're one of the partners of LinkedIn Social Impact, but it's really mentoring. They spend an hour or so helping them get on LinkedIn, which is great. We also help do that, but they've got employees who want to give back. A lot of younger generation and others want to give back. So it's a way for people who are skilled in their own field to help one-on-one with refugees. So it's, I used to be, when I was in the corporate world, there's a whole thing about mentoring programs and matching people up and that whole thing about what they can contribute. But it's really, some of them I think are naturally great at finding out how they can be helpful. But there's going to be a specific kind of either LinkedIn or industry thing or something helping with a CV, a very specific kind of thing. And so the coaching thing is different because it's more about them coming to, it's very client centered about you don't know where it's going. Some of them might need help with the interviewing things. Some of them might need help on helping them identify a career goal. One of the things I've noticed is when you ask a lot of refugees, what are your career goals? They name five that are completely different. And when I investigate a little bit more about that, I find they don't want to leave any door possibly closed. So they leave all these options open because maybe one of them will hit. But as a result, you can't really focus on your plan A and plan B because you've got all these other things and people don't really know what your career goals are and you can't really work toward that as well.
So do you help people then focus on what
Exactly.
they can do first? Even if they have five goals, one may not be able to be completed.
Exactly. And
Well,
short-term and long-term goals.
yes.
It's like, yeah, you need money right now, take any job, right?
Well, and I think that right now, when I'm hearing the role of the coaches, it really is about social engagement between two people.
Yeah.
Somebody that has a skill set that's helping another person with a skill set. But you said the word deep listen. I often use those words too in the Trauma
Yeah.
Research Institute. But when you deeply listen to the person, they know when you're deeply listening or when you're shining them
They do.
on. And I think especially when you've been in spaces where your life, which really the people who are refugees have often been in existential threat.
Yes.
And so it's been life and death for them. And they can kind of get the sense when people are shining them on. So it sounds like you
Right.
have amazing coaches and mentors
It's
who really want to help people.
it's the human connection and uh, a lot of times, mentors and consultants are like the smart one in the room, right? Coaches come with, no, I'm not the smart one in the room. We also have a motto that says, everything you know inside you. I'm going to help you pull that out. Now, that's true, except they need help on the cultural differences. They need help on job search. They need all that other stuff. But in terms of really focusing on what's important to them, it's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. And one refugee told me one time, he said, I was really suspect when I start working as a coach. Before I met my coach, they said, I thought, what are they going to tell me? It's like, they don't know my life. What are they? You're like, how dare them? It's like, and then they realize it wasn't that at all. It wasn't, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to help you explore what
What
is
you want to
what
do.
you want to do and what makes sense for you.
I love that. It's true that you're really in alignment with the Trauma Resource Institute.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to say a little bit more. I know we did for introductory trainings for your refugees
Yeah,
and
it's
for your
great.
coaches. So can you share a little bit about the effect, the impact, that would be helpful for us to know and for people to know that maybe
Sure.
are coaches that might want to also think about becoming more trained in the community resiliency model.
Yes. Uh, I want to sign up for your training, by the way.
Oh, good. I want you to become a teacher. Bev,
Yes,
I'm
I'm saying I
already
want to become a
spotting
teacher.
you there. Yes, I want you to become a teacher.
Um, because what I think it did two things. I think for coaches, it gave them a vocabulary and an understanding the neuroscience of it for those who some of them are into neuroscience. Uh, as a little aside, I was for a whole year I was working on a book on neuroscience and leadership. So I was
Love
looking at,
it.
I forgot to mention that to you.
Yes, that's great.
I worked on it for a whole year, and then I went to volunteer in a refugee camp. I came back. It took me 4 months to remember that I was working on this book. It took me another 2 months to even want to look at it. And then I looked at it, I go, this is not bad, but I'm kind of not there right now. I'm now into the refugee space.
And you
But
might come back to
I
that.
know,
You're thinking about it.
I'm
You might
thinking
come
about it.
back to that.
I
Yes.
had it the leadership lens, but now maybe it's the refugee lens. I think I will look back on that. Um, I'm sorry, what did you ask me?
Well, I was talking about the community resiliency model and what
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
neuroscience was very helpful.
It
And
was
I
very helpful. And also, to me and to the coaches, having this model in my head and in their heads about the zone of resiliency. The zone of resilience was so helpful that you could be sad, you could be upset, you could be whatever, and you could still be in the zone. And it made sense to say, to learn, okay, and for our coaches to identify somebody's above the resilience zone,
in a
you
high
know,
zone,
the
yes.
high zone, which is, anger and really kind of losing it, or below, kind of depressed
Yeah,
and sad and just kind of can't move on. So having that and then giving them tools about how the resources, the internal resources and the external resources was super helpful.
Well, also
Um,
I can see where it aligns with your approach anyway,
yeah,
right? It's like it was very
yeah.
interconnected. Yeah.
And the clients we had a separate call for the clients, and many of them were from Africa, like I mentioned in the refugee camps. And they were so engaged. They go, I need to share this with our people. This is so helpful
Yeah.
because knowing about the zone and also knowing about techniques that you could use or what you should be focusing on to help you get to that within the zone and not the above or below
Yeah,
the
so that
zone.
you can actually work on very simple skills to get back into your zone of well-being. And I just want to mention to our audience is that I talked about the iChill app before that has all of our
Yes.
skills, the concepts. So we've expanded some languages. So we have English, Spanish, Ukrainian, Arabic, Hebrew, um, Portuguese is coming. It's almost completely the finishing of the testing.
Wow.
Haitian Creole, Chinese, and Korean.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and we're working with somebody regarding Japanese, so we'll have 10. But we're always expanding. I would love to get it in Swahili,
I was going
but
to say Swahili is next.
Swahili in the future because our materials have been translated into Swahili, but not our
Yeah.
iChat app because that's something different, of course.
The
But
iChill app is fabulous
oh, good.
for people who have it.
I'm
Yeah,
glad that
yeah,
yeah,
I've gone
that's so
through it and
cool.
I really like it. I really like it.
Well, thank you. That is my voice.
Yeah,
That is my voice. At least the English, not the other languages. Of course,
yeah,
we have people from other areas. But thank you for that. I think that is what our community resiliency model does. It gives a common language. It gives very simple skills that are strength based,
yes,
and it also is a way of having that personal empowerment that I can regulate my own nervous system, and I
right.
can see where that could align with what your coaches are already doing
And
in
to
the
have,
space.
yeah, and to have not just coaches, but people on the ground in local places, kind of like what you're doing in Myanmar,
Yeah.
to be trained to help people in their community because they can relate really well to them. And having people trained globally on that, I think is
Well,
fabulous.
and we have projects in Angola, in Rwanda, in Uganda, in Kenya, in South Africa. So, there's probably some that I'm missing. Oh, Sierra Leone as
Mm.
well. So, I mean, and we have people that we've trained in other countries that I don't necessarily know what they're doing, but those ones that I mentioned are ones that I know that there's been a a large group of people that have been trained as community resiliency model teachers. In fact, in Angola, Mike Sapp, our CEO, and I trained members of the government because they wanted to be the first trauma-informed country in Africa.
Wow.
So, what you're saying about Africans and how they are so eager to find ways to help themselves. It's
Yeah,
like, it's also sometimes, sadly, people think in a negative vista and have old paradigms that are not
right.
necessarily true, are they?
No, no, I
Yes,
think that's
what we
absolutely
our
right.
experiences. So, oh my goodness. So I want to make sure, I wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah,
Um, you have been doing this work now for a number of years, and just having our conversation yesterday and today, I know that these individuals have greatly impacted you and your life. And I'm wondering if you could maybe share with us the wisdom that you've gained from meeting these amazing humans from around the world. And if you could just share a little bit about that. You've already shared some.
yeah. Um, I've learned so much because I probably had all these biases. A refugee, the images that you saw were people invading your world, walking, and they look like
Right.
you'll never find on our website or anywhere some what I call them the pathetic looking refugee. You won't find that because we deal with people on the move who are educated and um, all of our clients are English speaking, so we have a common language. Um, and what I've learned is about the resiliency of people that it's kind of mind-boggling um, of what they've gone through and how determined they are, and with a little bit of support, and they're so appreciative. And it doesn't take a huge amount to kind of get them on the right path where they feel it's on their path. And I also learned that people who are drawn to this profession, you and our coaches and our staff people, they are so passionate about the work. It's not like you go to I've been working in the corporate office most of my life in the corporate setting. It's like you kind of do your job, you maybe like it or not, but here there's a real passion and people feel like I'm making a difference.
Yeah.
And at a time when the world is so crazy globally, especially in the US, but globally, um, I've always said do one thing that you're passionate about. And if everybody does that one thing, for me, it's refugees, that the world will be a better place and we will come out the other end with some really good people, with some kind of structure. And then my learning is, I hope this organization continues. If we could get funding or if we could find a merger partner very in a short order, very soon.
So how do people find you? Can you say that your website so that if people would like to find out more about how they can donate?
Sure. The website is refugeejumpstart.org.
Refugee Jumpstart,
Jumpstart.
very easy to remember
Very easy to jumpstart.org. And my email, you could Bev, B-E-V, Bev at refugeejumpstart.org.
because right
And
now you could use some funding, and
yeah,
we're hoping there's somebody out there that says, you know what, I'm going to write you a check. So we're hoping that happens. So I'm going to
we
encourage
hope so.
anyone who may not be thinking about
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And
it.
and regardless of what happens, and I really want this to continue because we're having an amazing impact. Um, I want people to take what they've learned, both our clients and our coaches, and how do you apply this learning about building resiliency and seeing people as real people, not like refugee, seeing them as a whole
As a
person,
human person, a
human
whole,
person, and how they bring that forward in their own personal lives and in their professional lives. That's
because
what I
you're talking
love to
about
see.
respect
Yeah.
and
Dignity.
humanity. And all I can say is, Bev, it has been just an honor to have you on the show today.
It's been a
And
privilege for
um,
me.
and I just want to say to my audience, if there is a person who is living, what else is true? And just think about that trip to Greece and how that changed the trajectory of your life and the life of so many people. So if you're sitting there going, how can I help? We've given you some ideas. And so I just want to really a deep vow to you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for the work you're doing in the world.
And
And
for you and for your the work that your amazing work that you're doing in the world.
thank you so
So
much. That is also touches my heart. So
yeah.
this is Elaine Miller-Karas signing off for Resiliency Within. And remember in your life what else may be true. And you may be struggling right now, but widen the lens and maybe do that paradigm shift that Bev Weiss has been talking about today. Signing off today.